So I think it's fair to say that AI is the technology most propelling businesses forward today. Its processing needs are driving computing, and its decision-making is driving products and services. So what's the next AI? Well, one possibility is quantum computing, a technology that seems far off, unproven, experimental, yet holds the same amazing promise as AI to change how we fundamentally solve business problems. It's moving fast. MIT scientist Richard Feynman first proposed the possibility of such machines in the early 80s. And since then, we've evolved to the point that anyone in this room can connect to a quantum machine via the cloud and run their own code experiments. Quantum today is where AI was maybe 10 years ago. It's coming, and so you need to know about it and be ready for it. So to help us understand where quantum is today and what the possibilities are for tomorrow, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Marco Pistoia. Marco is Managing Director, Distinguished Engineer, and Head of JPMorgan Chase's Future Lab for Applied Research and Engineering. He leads research in quantum computing, quantum communication, cloud computing, confidential computing, and more. He has 250 patents with his name on them, and I can think of no one better than Marco to walk us through what's happening and what's hype in quantum computing. So, Marco, welcome to Future Compute, and the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I'm very honored. And I wanted to give you an overview of quantum computing and particularly what we're doing in quantum at JPMorgan Chase. So it may be a surprise that a bank is doing research in quantum computing and quantum communication, as well as the other areas that Elizabeth mentioned. But JPMorgan Chase is actually a big technology company in addition to being a bank. So it should not be a surprise that we're working on quantum computing because quantum has been identified as a game changer in many industry sectors. And particularly finance is considered to be the first industry sector to benefit from quantum computing, not only in the medium and in the long term, but also in the short term. And the reason why this is going to happen is because there is such an abundance of use cases in finance that can benefit from quantum computing. The reason being also that in finance, time is of the essence. So we need to have accurate results fast. We need to get them right away. We cannot wait, say, a couple of days even to compute the results. And the results have to be obtained in a short amount of time, also like immediately. And the reason is that the market is so volatile that any computation that can give us results has to be completed as soon as possible. So other industry sectors are also very well known for the fact that they can benefit from quantum computing. For example, the pharmaceutical industry sector, new materials, transportation, and so on. But finance really has so many use cases, and these go from, say, portfolio optimization to derivative pricing, risk analysis, and machine learning. So as good as quantum computing is and promises to be, in particular, it poses two main risks to society, actually. So, and also to some companies in particular, but also I will mention in a second what can happen with like the wrong use of quantum computing. So the first risk, which I think involves pretty much every company, is the risk of just thinking that quantum computing is a technology that will materialize, say, a few years from now. So there is nothing that we should do about it now. Let's wait for quantum computing to become effective and operational. That's actually, we think, the wrong approach. Because when a quantum advantage becomes a reality, we cannot be caught off guard. A company that has not prepared itself for the advent of quantum computing will run the risk of being surpassed by its competitors. I mentioned the term quantum advantage, which means the moment in which quantum computers will be able to surpass classical computers. which means basically being able to perform computations more rapidly and more accurately than their classical counterparts. There is yet another milestone that we envision coming in the future that's called quantum supremacy, which is even more dramatic. It means that a quantum computer will be able at that point to perform computations that a classical computer cannot complete in any reasonable amount of time. So the risk is not to be quantum ready then. And what are the solutions? The number one solution is to start building a portfolio of quantum algorithms and applications. This is true for a financial institution, but also for other companies, say pharmaceutical companies and so on. Another important thing to consider is that at the moment, there are many quantum computing vendors, like companies that provide the quantum hardware. Nobody knows which company will achieve quantum advantage and quantum supremacy before the others, which technology will win over the other technologies, because quantum computers have different mechanisms underneath. So we actually experimented something in JPMorgan Chase. We embedded a compiler in our quantum computing software stack that allows us to recompile our code, our algorithms, to potentially every quantum computer underneath. So we don't have to rewrite our algorithms in order to interface different computers. This is actually, I think, a very good solution that we have integrated in our software stack, because it allows us to be flexible and to pivot towards a better performing quantum computer. So that's what I mean by building hardware agnostic solutions. It's also important to continue to monitor the quantum hardware ecosystem. If somebody wants to proactively build a portfolio of algorithms and applications, it's also important to know what's going on at the hardware level, and I guess also protecting the IP, because this is going to be maybe a very competitive field. And there is also a second risk. So the second risk is something that basically we didn't want quantum computing to be able to do. In a sense, quantum can solve many problems much more efficiently and much more rapidly than classical computers. Of course, I'm saying it can solve, but in the future, so it has the potential of solving. One of these problems is breaking public key encryption. In fact, Professor Peter Shor here at MIT devised an algorithm known as Shor's algorithm, after his name, that is capable of factoring large numbers into prime numbers with a gigantic decrease of complexity in this operation. So it actually allows for the factorization of large numbers into prime factors, which is the foundation of public key cryptography. By achieving this result, basically quantum computing can allow an attacker to compute somebody's private key from that person's public key. The public key is well known to everyone. So the disadvantage of this is that once we know somebody's private key, we can decrypt data, apply digital signatures on behalf of the person, basically literally impersonate another entity. There are two solutions to this problem that have been identified by the scientific field. One is called the post-quantum cryptography, which consists of classical cryptographic algorithms that are there to replace these vulnerable public key cryptography algorithms that have been identified as being vulnerable. So PQC, post-quantum cryptography, is based on the assumption that these new algorithms are going to be very hard to break, even by a quantum computer. And yet there is another solution that is based on quantum as well. It's almost like fighting fire with fire. It's called the quantum key distribution. So QKD is a technology that allows two parties to exchange the same secret key for encrypted communication without using any assumption, any mathematical assumption. For example, there is no problem like factoring large numbers or anything behind QKD. Actually, QKD has been mathematically proven to be unconditionally secure and provide everlasting security. So this is a very attractive solution, and it's actually not as far away as people can think. In fact, at JPMorgan Chase, we have recently achieved a very important result, I think, because in collaboration with Toshiba and Siena, we were able to build the first quantum distribution network capable of supporting real world applications up to a distance of 100 kilometers. So the two parties have to be within 100 kilometers of distance. So it's not yet fully usable across intercontinental hubs, but at least in metropolitan areas. When I say that it's capable of supporting real world applications, I also mean that we were able to prove 800 gigabits per second of data rates, multiplexed with the same channel over which the keys are exchanged, and multiplexed with additional data for a total of 2.4 terabits per second. So nobody had ever done this, and it's very surprising and very happy for me as well as a scientist to be part of a project where we achieved this result. In particular, we actually demonstrated the usefulness of QKD by securing a blockchain application. We deployed the application that JPMorgan Chase uses for payments. It's called Link, and it is a blockchain application, as I mentioned, and we were able to secure the confidentiality of Link. Of course, more work is required, but what we need to do at this point is extend that distance. We cannot really go beyond 100 kilometers for now, but there is a lot of research going on to extend the distance above 100 kilometers. So this is for quantum security. Of course, we did also work on quantum computing. For example, we were able to use new features available in quantum computing hardware. The Quantinuum quantum computer offers technology called the mid-circuit measurement and reuse and quantum conditional logic. Basically, this allows for measuring a qubit while executing a program, as opposed to waiting until the very end of the execution and measuring the entire quantum state. So you can measure a qubit, get the value, is 0 or 1. The qubit at the point is collapsed to classical value, but then we reset the qubit and we can reuse it. So potentially this allows you to have even more qubits than the physical number of qubits that you have. So we published 2 papers that use this technology, and we even applied it to the problem of portfolio optimization. We extended the HHL algorithm, which, by the way, was invented by another MIT professor, Aram Harrow, along with 2 other researchers. We extended it to work with mid-circle measurement and reuse and quantum conditional logic. So in conclusion, what do we need to do to become quantum ready? So I think it's very important for every company to start the journey to become quantum ready now, and constantly monitor the ecosystem. There is a lot of material online, like resources that can be leveraged to learn quantum computing and build a team inside each company that can work on quantum computing. Now, quantum advantage also means that some applications will be able to be run more effectively on a quantum computer. So I think it makes sense to identify the first wave applications, those that will benefit from quantum computing before other applications. And finally, it's important to scale. We have, in JPMorgan Chase, we have the Future Lab for Applied Research and Engineering, called also FLAIR, as the acronym goes. However, we also understand that it's important to decentralize the effort and make sure that the entire company understands quantum computing. So we have several users, say quantum enablers, quantum curious, quantum researchers, and also quantum users, somebody that just wants to use quantum computing without even learning it. So I think all these types of users have to be supported. Thank you, and I'd like to talk with Elizabeth now. Thank you.
So yes, let's talk. So we're going to have a few minutes here to dig in a little bit. We may have some questions here from our online audience. So, but first, before we do that, we will eventually want to look to this audience too for any questions. So, two risks: being left behind and security. I want to start with the first. I have two questions. I'm guessing that a lot of folks here want the answers to these too. What is the timeline here for quantum to have a real business impact? Or maybe another way of putting it is, how long do these folks have to get ready? And, of course, what do they need to do to get ready?
That's actually a very important question, because that's what we actually ask ourselves all the time. So for quantum advantage, there are two components. One is the hardware, because without the hardware being able to support quantum advantage, we will not be able to achieve it. And the other is having the algorithms and applications ready. So I think the most important thing from our point of view, from the point of view of a company that doesn't produce hardware, is to work very hard on quantum algorithms and applications in order to be able to apply them to the hardware when the hardware is ready. So it's hard to say when that will happen, because we depend on the hardware industry, but it may happen before we think. We are a little bit pessimistic in the sense, when I say pessimistic, it's also a way to be optimistic. So in the sense that if quantum...
That's said like an optimist.
Exactly. Like optimistic means quantum computers will actually be effectively ready for us. It's also like pessimistic in the sense that the risk becomes a little bit higher, but it may happen just a few years from now.
Okay. If you have a question in this room, go ahead and raise your hand, because we're running low on time and I don't want to miss you. So while we're waiting for that, Marco, do you see, a question from Walter, who is on our online audience, do you see a relevant role and space for open source arrangements in developing quantum solutions?
Absolutely. I think open source solutions at this point in time in particular are very important, because quantum computing is not yet at the point in which we can compete with each other. We are at the point in which we have to collaborate with each other, because it's still at the scientific level, even though we have to think about moving towards the business. But we have to help each other. We shouldn't see each other as competitors, but as colleagues. And so the open source approach is something that will definitely help us.
Question as well that we talked about in preparing for this discussion, Marco, and that's the talent. Where's the talent? We've had a lot of conversations about the challenge of finding AI talent. Now talk to me about the quantum talent. For people here who are needing to think about these questions about getting ready, where are they going to find the folks that are going to help them do that?
It is actually very hard. I admit it. It's very hard to find quantum computing experts, or even harder to find people who understand the quantum key distribution. However, I think America in particular, like the universities, are catching up very quickly. There are now quantum computing degrees available in many universities, and also the Chicago Quantum Exchange, which is a consortium of companies and academic institutions and national labs, have created a program called the QSTEAM to standardize the quantum programs across all the American universities and make sure that you can transfer credits around and so on. So finding talent is difficult, but I think we are taking actions. And also one important thing to say is that the quantum computing stack is very diverse. So there is like the cloud-based access, applications, algorithms, circuits, and hardware. So there is really a lot of new jobs that the quantum computing paradigm is now offering to the workforce.
Yeah. There are more questions, I think, than we have time for, but Marco will be around, I hope, for at least a few minutes to take any of your questions And we certainly appreciate your time.
And by the way, we have a reception this evening.
Yes, right. And we thank you. And well-timed reminder, Marco. We have a reception this evening here, so stick around, and you'll have lots of time to ask your follow-up questions of Marco. So let's leave it there. As I said, he'll be here in the break. You can dig into any questions, and really do appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.